I appreciate our tourism community. I appreciate our hoteliers.
How much gossip and tea do you have that you keeping to death and you're not letting nobody know? You hear all the good stuff. I know you do. That's why I post what I'm doing on Linda Wilder's page. You know, the worst problem that I've had, it ain't been with white people, it's been people who look like me. And now that I sit in this seat, people got the nerve to tell me that I have sold out. People are tired. They're tired of voting for people and then get something else. I'm not trying to secure the black vote. Miss me on that, because my name is Linda Gladys Knight Bryan. That's right, everybody know I'm a hard worker. It ain't nothing. I look here. I'm not new to this. I'm true to this, so I can say anything I want to say. Just don't like me. You know, this darkness, they got y'all with the slave mentality saying that we shucking and driving. Hey, public records. I'm not saving your baby and killing all these other babies because you won't do what you're supposed to do. Recognize it's not my truth. And if y'all want to follow people, follow them. People follow Jim Jones. People follow Hitler. All the time. One of my sponsors. You know I'm loud, y'all. Where y'all at? Y'all hiding? They hiding from me, y'all. They saw me coming and they started hiding. I see you over there hiding.
Savannah needs additional tourism. Savannah needs additional tourism.
I mean, I appreciate our tourism community. I appreciate our hoteliers in particular.
Growth is everywhere. New homes, the ports, tourism, and the Savannah College of Art and Design. Growth costs residents in higher property taxes, higher rents, and higher sales tax. Isn't it time for growth to pay its fair share?
John?
Chuck, good evening.
Oh, another good evening it is. It is Thursday, February 16th, 2023, and this is episode 109 of the Better Savannah podcast. It's been about 2 or 3 weeks since we came up and did an episode, and we're going to start off tonight with an update to our last episode, which was titled A Wilder Week, with the Linda Wilder Bryan shenanigans. But how you doing, John?
I'm good. I'm trying to remember how to do this, Chuck.
I know. Well, it's when you stop doing it for a couple weeks, it's like, okay, how do I ride the bike? All right. So just running things down. Let's start off with an update to last week's show, or to 3 weeks ago, our last show.
All righty.
So after us and ATR, a couple of others really pushing it, they finally got some traction over here. We're going to start off with we're going to call this segment the good cop bad cop segment. Okay.
Okay.
So here comes on this article was February 8th, which was a little bit more than a week ago, about 8 days ago. Will People, Savannah Morning News, their main headline writer, title of the article, "People Followed Hitler," quotation. Savannah Council Walter Bryan hurls insults, claims provocation. In deleted Facebook video, Alderwoman calls colleagues large ghetto and compared their followers to those of Hitler. So Will writes this straight up, and I'm just gonna ask you for some of your updated thoughts now that this story is ruminated throughout the community. Savannah Morning News did post the entirety of the 46-minute rant on their page, which I'll stick the link in to our comments section here right now. So you can watch the entirety of the video. But obviously, we've been, running some video on our own page showing people what they, what they have in a third district alderwoman. John?
Listen, a lot of people saw the Will Peoples article. Not
Yes.
one of them said that they could sit through all 46 minutes of her dissertation, her rambling.
Sure.
I think somebody got, into it 4, 5, 6 minutes and said, "I've seen enough." So it's interesting that the Savannah Morning News was, kind enough to post the entire rant, but nobody.
Obviously, you can't convey in a 2-minute video what's said in a 46-minute video.
No,
and
you can't. I think realistically, they
watch
did
the
the right
entirety of the video if they're interested. Yes, because clearly this is a new this is a new low amongst this entire council. Okay, it's a new low. Never in 3 years of beating up on this mayor have you, I, or Julius Hall, or Pastor Leonard Smalls, or Alderwoman Keisha Gibson Carter, or Alicia Miller Blakely, never have we compared the leadership of Van Johnson to the leadership of one of the most genocidal figures of history, world history, especially in the last 100 years. It's ridiculous. So again, the good cop, bad cop routine, John. Will Peoples is up here doing the right thing, writing the story as it is. There was a good quote that I'll get to here from Van Johnson in a second. And then in a minute, we're going to get to Adam Van Brimmer coming out with the bad cop, same, all sidesism thing.
All right.
Remember in November, they keep using this same photo from the Weeping Time thing or the memorandum of U.S. Attorney's thing from last August. They'll never update the photo. But yeah, in the video, Linda Bryan said, y'all can keep following them if you want to, but people followed Hitler, people followed Jim Jones. Y'all can believe y'all truth. Y'all can believe what y'all see. And what y'all see is a bunch of crap, a bunch of pettiness, a bunch of jealousy. They hate me because I'm fabulous. I got high self-esteem. They can't take that. Again, these type of comments, when you read them plainly, they're hard to swallow. Go ahead, John.
I've got a favorite quote in the piece.
What's your favorite quote?
Well, it's so indicative of who we're talking about. Linda Walter Bryan says, "I'm not Michelle Obama."
Here it is on the screen.
When they go low, I'm going to go lower. So I'm sure that Van was, had a migraine trying to manage Linda. And I think he said, Linda, don't do any more lives. Stop doing that. And she has dutifully not done a live. I go check her page, because I'm curious.
Sure. Yeah.
But what she's done is she's overcompensating with stupid, gratuitous posts for the most part in great volume. I mean, I jokingly wrote that she's doing 20 a day. I think she's doing 30 a day. And
yeah,
I guess that doesn't cross Van's.
This is. Go ahead. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
Well, he just said, man, back off social media and do not do any lives. So she said, okay, I won't do any lives, but I'm going to double or triple my stupid content posts.
This is the most bland pull quote from Mayor Van Johnson. Quote, I spoke to her, parentheses, the Facebook Live video. Quote, inappropriate behavior is inappropriate no matter who does it. End of quote, Johnson said. You can't always treat people the way they treat us.
Yeah. Well,
what about locking other people out of the agenda? Like, we're supposed to not treat y'all. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's right on top of the civility resolution.
Yes.
And one of Van's wingmen goes off the reservation and evokes Hitler. I mean, I'm sure the guy had a massive migraine trying to manage her.
So here comes Van Brimmer, Adam Van Brimmer, editorial commentary, opinion columnist, Man of Morning News. This is like 5 days ago on Sunday. Step away from the webcam, and I'm not going to read much of this, but I'm gonna scroll it down the screen here for our viewers that are live on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. But again, I'll put this in the comments for those who are listening later. This is Van Brimmer's kind of response to this, and it's the old both sidesism. Okay. So he starts off, linking to Will People's piece and the video, and mentions the Hitler Jim Jones. And then as soon as this first, piece is over, he concludes with the public should strongly voice its disappointment, but then goes on for the rest of the article to basically, same sides it, both of these things. Sorry about that. Let me get back.
He wants to pile on and drag
correct
Keisha and Alicia into this when in the Will People's article, Keisha and Alicia had no comment. They were served a softball at the net and they didn't hit it. They restrained themselves and realized this is Linda's moment to shine. So they let it alone, which was, I think, showed great restraint on their part.
All right, so this pull quote here from Van Brimmer. Watching their programs, talking about Alicia, Keisha, ATR, and probably us too, is akin to watching a Donald Trump campaign rally, only without the meme potential. Bro, like, the amount of effort that has gone into maintaining this administration's saving their face is very much akin to the 2020 media effort to, elevate Donald Trump because of ratings. They go after Keisha, they go after these women because it's good for the mayor to have a natural enemy. This is not selling ads to trial attorneys, personal injury attorneys, it's not about policy. And also too, like I would say 80%, 70% of Alicia and Keisha's time online is spent talking about policy and talking about issues impacting their communities. Dietrich Leggett, is chasing every ambulance in the first 2 years of his term, just showing up at every crime scene and every car accident. Nick Palumbo will get on once a month and ignore every pressing question from somebody he deems not one of his supporters, right? I mean,
Right.
this is just, they've all become establishment.
Yeah, well, Chuck, it's a brave new world. Social media is how we uh, express ourselves and consume our news. I'm not passing judgment on it. I'm just objectively saying that there's no turning back to sitting by the fireplace and listening to a radio announcement. That's archaic. So it's a social media universe. Malcolm McLean, I think, said the message is the medium, or the medium is the message. I forget which way that goes, but uh, what do you think about this incredibly robust Nick Zoller PR information department that Van has initiated? Well, I mean, it's always been there. He has supercharged it because he understands the importance of social media. Every Friday night, he gets on and placates 1,000 people. Does he talk about policy? No. Does he wish everybody happy birthday and call them by
100%.
name? Yeah, he does. I mean, it is uh, an exquisite example of social media manipulation. And that has transferred over into the bowels of City Hall with Nick Zoller and the city communications department. And I guess what's fair for one is fair for all. But I think Van Burmer needs to get off his high horse by saying that this is a phenomenon unique to Trumpsters and crazies like Keisha and Alicia. No, this is the brave new world, Adam, we're living in, and it's a social media reality. And if there's any limits to it, Linda Walter Bryant certainly found them in her rant.
More so than anyone else on council has the entire term. Um, I want to pull this out here. This is the conclusion of Van Burmer's piece. The harsh reality for residents is they elected a group of semi-professional community activists to council. Walter Bryan, Gibson Carter, Blakely, and even one of the alderpersons who has stayed above the bickering, Reed Silent, Dietrich Leggett, used the reputations they built through activism to propel them to office. What is a semi-professional activist, John? What's a semi-professional as opposed to a professional community activist? Are there contracts? Are there endorsement deals if you're a professional community activist?
Well,
Was
it is
KJ a professional activist? The one who did the SCAD protests with a few years back? Was she a professional activist or a semi-professional?
No, it's Adam Van
Tell us about
Burmer.
that.
Well, it's Adam Van Burmer trying to turn a phrase that fell flat. Okay. It's a meaningless throwaway phrase, but on first read, it's kind of clever. He comes from a sports background. Semi-professional is a phrase he's intimately familiar with and comfortable with. But in terms of activism,
might be euphemistic right there.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. Listen, man, we were with someone earlier today. You'll remember we were talking about the history of city council and the ebb and flow of it, and every election is about maintaining the status quo. That is the election outcomes that have repeated themselves for the 30 years that I've been here until last election, 2019. We've talked ad nauseum about the defections of Dietrich, Linda, and Curtis. I think Nick was already planning to defect. There was no big surprise there. But those three, if there's any semi-professionalness going on, it's in the defections of three people who vowed to make a mark in history of local government, and then failed to do so. That's the story, Adam.
Well, all right. So to me, John, we got like 3 different generations on the screen right here. Okay, John, you're a boomer, right?
I'm old as fuck.
You're old. Yes, I understand. Nobody's making fun of you. We appreciate
Oh,
your wisdom.
I'm quite good with it, Jeff.
I hear you. Adam over here. Adam is Generation X, and I'm a millennial, right? And
Right.
For a lot of people that don't really understand Generation, like Adam Van Brimmer is that quintessential, like Revenge of the Nerds era movie. For a movie reference, like 1984, 83. Like he is that perfect Southern aristocratic racist from that era. Like he's never gonna come out and be like explicitly racist, but like this type of writing, talking about, to me, what I read this as, John, semi-professional community activist is that aristocratic Southern diction for black, and not just any, but black and black. You see what I mean? And the reality for Adam Van Brimmer, John, is that Dietrich Leggett and Linda Wilder Bryan, to quote Fox News' Laura Ingraham, they shut up and dribble in reference to LeBron James, right? Like they went along with the status quo. So, they might have earned their place being a loud, proud black community activist. But when they got to council, they learned, how to get along, to go along, and there's some beaming pride, I think, in that demarcation, on behalf of Adam Van Brimmer, 100% here. That's the way I read it. But again, I'm I'm a millennial. I'm looking at it through a lens of the 90s and 2000s, where, in the election of Barack Obama, we were told, racism is supposed to be over. It's ridiculous. Like, again, this is just that era of Southern aristocratic Generation X. It's all these guys who are about 20 years younger than you, John.
So does that make Adam a Pokemon or a Pac-Man guy?
Pokemon's more mine, but Pac-Man, I would say no. He's a Pac-Man. Quarter arcade days. It's 1980s, man. It's just, high interest rates.
He's no pinball wizard, right?
I don't know about all that.
That's my generation.
I hear you. I thought it was interesting, the good cop, bad cop dynamic on this Linda Wilder Bryan coverage between the news desk reporter Will Peebles and the editorial columnist, who's supposed to be providing the context and analysis for all of the hard news.
Well, just to put a tack in this before we go on to the next subject, I just want to quickly say that this civility issue it is so misplaced. If you were elected under the banner and the pledge of disrupting the status quo for the benefit of the community, because everything's being siloed here and not moving, horizontally, which is a good, honest. I mean, you could debate all day, the supply side economics and the role of capitalism, but the things that this council went into office to accomplish have got blown all apart, with the exception of Bernetta, Alicia, and Keisha. Now, are they a little inelegant at times? Sure. Be the first one to agree with that. But that's like the lacquer on top of this table. The structural and functional and important component of this thing is the damn. I'm using Van's metaphor. Didn't even realize it. Table. The substance of this table is the important part of the table. It's not the varnish. So to avoid talking about the thwarted revolution, or postponed revolution, I would prefer to phrase it, uh, to harp on civility and to miss that larger overarching component is just irresponsible journalism or blindness. I don't know which. I think it's by design. I just think he's lined up, as you just explained. I think he resents changing business as usual. I think he's an advocate for the Chamber of Commerce and the traditional.
You know what? Let me say it better. You know what I think he resents the most?
What's that?
Is that the cost of doing business is so much higher now. You know, like the you know, because of groups like ours, because of ATR, because of leaders like Keisha, Alicia, like the cost of keeping status quo going, like it's higher. You know.
Yeah, we were more easily dismissed. I think there's an unwritten rule that you don't dare mention Better Savannah by name, for fear that somehow we become more powerful or more well known. Hey man, Adam, we're going to be doing this whether you mention us or not. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner maybe we can get down to discussing the things that really matter, which you want to avoid.
Well, the sooner we can get to some level of compromise. You know.
I'm okay with that.
You know, but
they're
you
not.
know, the other side's idea of compromise is go along and get along and do what the Chamber of Commerce wants. It's not acceptable anymore. You know, Robert Bryant, I see in the comments, still Dominique. You know, ask him about that 2010 student government president's campaign at Georgia Southern. Ask him about that if you got him there. But super close election, as I recall.
How come I can't see the comments in my feed?
I don't know, man. I don't know. It's been 3 or 4 weeks since we got on StreamYard. I don't remember.
So you're rusty too. Okay.
Yeah, a little rusty with all of it.
All right.
Well, moving on. I went up to Atlanta last week, and it kind of occurred to me that Chatham Day, Savannah Chatham Day at the Capitol, is kind of now like the unofficial start of the city campaign season.
Well, this is an early election cycle.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that next. I'm kind of connecting the two issues here, but I just kind of noticed that you had your incumbent, majority crew up there. Van and his entire 5. I saw all of them at various stages. But before we start getting into the politics this year, I want to stop and just make a note of something. I was texting with our esteemed former state senator, Lester Jackson, because this is, of course, the first year
of him not being in office.
Of him not being there during Chatham Day. And it felt, there was a lot that felt was missing. Okay.
Man, that's sweet. It was nostalgic.
Definitely some nostalgia for me.
With a voice.
Lester Jackson, along with like Regina Thomas, these members have been in the delegation since, I was in school in Americus, Georgia, coming up around the education system and being at the legislature a couple of times during grade school and high school. And, I noticed something remarkable. Chatham Day's really fallen off. And I don't want to blame the Chamber of Commerce. I was speaking with a political friend of mine who I'm not going to name on this show about this last week, about how it used to be, John, from 2000, really since you were on the commission back in the day when you were there, since 02, 01, 03, all the way through the early teens, the 20 teens, when I started going, there would be this just huge rollout at the Capitol. Meaning, you get at the Capitol at 7:30 in the morning. All the drunk business people still show up at the Ritz later on that night. But if you were smart, you were really trying to work on some stuff. You were at the Capitol at 7:30 in the morning. There'd be a huge breakfast in the basement floor of the Capitol, and 9 a.m. sharp, there'd be a big in room 314. It's called Club 314. It's the big committee room, like where the big committees meet for the legislature, and you'd have the Chatham delegation, and of course the majority of my time that's been Ron Stevens for the majority of the last 10 years. as the chairman of the delegation since 2014. So, they would get up and give big presentations. They would have the commissioners of every major department of the state government. The governor would come in and give a speech, the Speaker of the House, the President pro tem of the Senate. And this year, there's none of that, right? Now, two reasons were cited for this. Can you guess what they were?
Well, you told me.
I told you one of them, but I probably told you both of them. But two reasons why this might not be the same.
The port.
Number one is COVID, right? So like COVID, not really having a full Chatham Day the last couple of years. That's definitely a damper on the event. I get that to a certain small percentage.
Well, not to interrupt, but the MLK parade this year was bigger than ever post-COVID because there was pent up lack of participation for 2 years. And that's not the case in Atlanta, not to shoot holes in the concept, but I think it's the other big issue.
Yeah, the other big issue is what you said. It's the Port of Savannah. And so my friend was telling me about how, look, since Jack Kingston wrote the original bill for the port deepening of Savannah back in 1999, it's been a 20-year struggle to get that port deepened. And it finally happened in 2016, 17, 18, finishing up recently in 2020. So, now that port project is complete, it seems like the red carpet is just not being rolled out for us in Atlanta nearly as much as it used to. We've got the port expanded. We've got the Hyundai plant coming. I've said this for a few years now. The attitude from Atlanta towards us in Savannah has been, hey, we gave you $250 million in state money for the port. You're getting $1 billion in incentives for the Hyundai plant. Like, you're good. You're getting your fair share. But that's not really necessarily true.
Savannah's been a simp for the state. You like my vocabulary? I got that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, nobody wants to admit they're being cucked by the state government. It's not a great feeling. But the reality of it is, just like with the West Side Urban Health Clinic, we sell at the health clinic for freaking $8 million of bricks on River Street, and when Otis Johnson.
They keep falling apart into the river, and
But if there was one theme overall in Chatham Day when I was up there, it's certainly that the election is here, and this is free on the Savannians website. You should subscribe, but this is just their little city council race tracker, which is going to be a little cool map that we can refer to over the coming weeks and months as the elections come up. So, John, this map's even a little outdated. We've got a declaration from Dietrich Leggett the other day on Valentine's Day. Linda Walter Bryan's is next week. Van Johnson's is official. The announcement in all capital letters. The next Thursday, so the races are starting to develop. But obviously, I think the biggest story so far is that there are three challengers already in District 3 over in Linda Walter Bryan's district over there. That is really starting to look like this year's kind of Tabitha Odell incumbency, too many challengers factor. That's looking like that. Another case test scenario for that philosophy.
I think I'd like to know what you think, but I think people recognize that that's the weakest link in Van's pell-mell armor is Linda Walter Bryan.
Right.
So it just is logical and organic that you try to pick off the weakest link, and therefore you got already here. It's barely February, mid-February. Yeah.
It's the middle of February.
3 challengers, and a couple more are rumored to be interested. I mean, nobody's rushing to run against Nick.
Well, he
right?
hasn't announced, in his defense, he hasn't announced whether he's seeking re-election to the 4th district seat or
No,
to an
no.
at-large post 1 or post 2 seat.
His competency levels, though, Chuck, although I have a tough time trusting the guy and believing everything he says, he is cogent, apparently, reliable, and he speaks English pretty well and writes pretty well. All of those subsets in the third, what one has to question.
Yeah. Well, RG Bryant, I was saw in the comments earlier, obviously already running for the 5th district. But these announcements that we're going to talk about, coming up is Rashida Edwards. She's filed paperwork for post C1, and Pat Rossiter. Okay. This was another announcement. I'm gonna pull up this other link here, John. Give me a second. So, the races are definitely developing from
early,
way faster than they did 4 years ago. Wouldn't you say so?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Chuck, it kind of qualifying, which is August, middle of August, kind of was the kickoff. And here we are in February.
Right.
And things are popping in every district. But I'm glad you're going to tell us about the Rossiter entry. It's a bizarre one.
This is a bizarre kind of reading series here. This is, again, courtesy of our man in SMN land, Will Peebles from Savannah Morning News. Let me get this up on the screen here. Another Rossiter enters Savannah politics.
Yeah. Our viewers might want to know that his father ran in 2000 and...
No, that was his older brother. No, John.
Older brother.
That's his older brother that ran for mayor in 03? Something like that. 04, I don't know.
04.
Yeah, something like that, right?
And
and
he was in the race to create a runoff and a pathway for Pete Lukakis against Otis Johnson.
Right.
This was Rossiter was a last-minute entry, like a day or two before the filing deadline passed during filing week. And Dickie Mopper had spent almost $500,000 of his own money and others to knock Pete out and run head-to-head with Otis. And I think Pete got Rossiter to run, splitting the vote, and it worked because it created a runoff between good old Pete Lukakis, rest his soul, and Otis Johnson. But it didn't work at the end because Otis won. And it was a razor-thin race. So here we go with the Rossiter.
All right, so this is from Will Peebles' article, John. I just want to pull some quotes for reading, okay? Under the the meat of the article, under platform, quote, Rossiter supports business and tourism growth, but also preserving the integrity of neighborhoods, quote, from downtown to Georgetown, end quote, he said at the event.
From sea to shining sea.
From CETA to shining CETA, yeah. Okay, first off, I just want to point out, Georgetown, 99.9% of it is not in the city limits of Savannah. Okay, that's only incorporated Chatham County. Those elections are a year from now in 2024. Maybe you're running for the wrong seat. I just want to point that out, John. Just want to point that out. Okay, but more importantly, Rossiter supports business and tourism growth, not sustainability of the business and
Not
tourism we already have. He
not
wants to
tourism
grow
management,
business
not
and
management.
tourism,
Yeah.
but also somehow while growing these business and tourisms that are degrading the integrity of our neighborhoods, he also wants to preserve the integrity of neighborhoods. Like this guy's like freaking Superman already.
Well, it's a lot of
Let me go
Alvin.
on. Let me go. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. Quote, he said he would support efforts to increase tourism, but won't forget the people who live here. John, you've been here 30 years. How many times have you heard that line said, paraphrased, 15 different ways in the last 20 years?
If I had a nickel for every time I heard that, Chuck, I'd be super wealthy.
You'd be able to retire out of somewhere else, probably.
Yeah, maybe back to Malibu.
Retire here, exactly.
Afford that, yeah.
All right. Rossiter said he was concerned about the negativity shown by current council members.
Of course he is.
Compared council meetings to a, quote, reality show. He said he would have canceled that show during its first year, and he will put the civil back in city leadership.
Who wrote
What do you
this?
think about Will Peoples wrote this, but he's just quoting Rossiter.
Okay,
Rossiter wrote this himself.
Those are quotes. Okay, fair enough.
These are pull quotes from Rossiter. Quote,
Yeah,
I want to carry on the tradition of public service established by my family and use my extensive background in education and community service to benefit the entire city of Savannah. That's there's a decent quote.
Yeah, well,
that's it.
Maybe Bill Hubbard helped him write that press release before Bill left. That's what it sounds like, Chuck, is straight out of, you name it, Paula Wallace's office or Michael Owens or Bill Hubbard or Joe Marinelli. I mean, come on, people. This is so predictable and so 2015. It's 2023, people. This boat has sailed. Support and expand tourism. That's a hell of a concept.
But I'm not going to forget the little people, though. I'm not going to forget the people who live here, though.
Yeah, I will.
Because they view. All right, so let me tell you why they are. They view that the people who live here are better. They're like, oh, just get a job in tourism, make money off of it, buy yourself an Airbnb for $600,000. So that there's less fucking housing for everybody else to live in. I mean, like, this is how they view. This is how these policymakers view. But also, this put civil back in city leadership. I'm just gonna be real, people. Man. This man's father was an alderman at a time when civil rights gains in Savannah were fought tooth and nail and won inch by inch. Okay, and to say that his family's legacy of running for office or being in office, that is a reason enough to elect somebody. I just don't buy that. Well, what is the platform? Or right now, his only platform is support business, increase tourism, maybe try my best not to forget about you people that actually live here.
My advice to Pat Rossiter is to fire up the flux capacitor and blast back to 1960.
Well, I think, I said to somebody, Alicia Miller Blakely is living right with the Lord, baby. Because this is about the easiest draw she could have got. Honestly, she's gonna beat this man.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be that close. Do I think she'll beat him by 20 points like she did Tony Center? Probably not. But she'll beat him by 10.
Yeah.
It'll be 55-45. To think that like young people who have moved to this city in the last 5 years are gonna vote for. With all due respect, John, let me scroll back up to this picture because look at this.
He's old. He's old
John,
as I am.
You look better, but you look better than he does.
Well,
you look better than he does, man.
It's not a beauty contest. I've got my head screwed on straight.
I hear you.
And I understand.
That's a bad banker's haircut. You look like an everyday guy. I'm just saying, like just on a face test, like it's an old geezer. Like so was Tony Center, so was Eddie DeLoach. You
Well, I
know,
still got a blazer.
so
and
was
a
Bill
tie.
Durrance. I know you can. I know you can clean it. I'm just saying though, like I don't see him as a strong candidate for a citywide post. You know, and I mean for Nick Palumbo and anybody else who might be thinking like, if you are a white male, you need to have like a strong connection. You need to build a strong connection to the black community of the city before you run for a citywide post. Like Joe Steffen comes to mind. That's a white lawyer who does a ton of work in the
Yeah.
black community. Was the university attorney for Savannah State University for many tough years. Like that's a guy who has really earned it to run citywide. I haven't even gotten there yet, so stop asking me to run for citywide office, okay? Like I'm not there yet either. I'm not from here. Like I just don't see it when I look at this guy. I just don't see it. So that's one of the big entries into the race, John. We've got Mike McCann has announced in the 6th district.
Yep.
That's another. We've got several coaches. Mike McCann is a youth sports coach. Todd Rhodes is a youth
Yeah,
sports coach.
I think with these two very, do I dare say famous, these paramount coaches who are the real deal are going to blow open the doors of city policy on parks and recreation. We've already heard a little bit of what's going on, and I really welcome it. I mean, sports and recreation are not my home plate or North Star by
It's been
any
a while
means.
since you had a kid in the system. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, the city has evidently the city has a disastrous history of mangling policy and taking advantage of kids that want to participate in city sports. So I'll learn a lot this election season, but good luck to Curtis and Dietrich trying to defend that. Dietrich is a coach, so he's going to have to keep a straight face when the truth comes out. It's going to be interesting.
Well, I want to end this week's show, just kind of how, again, the race is on, get your engine started, NASCAR season started this week, Daytona, baby. All of a sudden policies are getting enacted. And, I'll just start before we go to impact fees. I'll take this comment from Joanne. This is one of these issues where people we support on council, they didn't even vote for this. Look, I love Keisha and Alicia and Bernetta to death, but they did not support the term limits bill. My striking theory is that the term limits were paired with the council raises. Perhaps those issues should have been taken separately instead of as one. I think it kind of muddled up the issue. But to be clear, I'm in favor of both the council getting their salaries raised and for term limits. I was in favor of both of them. So, this is just an example of people that I do generally support their positions on policy. I don't support them 100%. Okay.
Yeah,
I disagree with Alicia Keisha and Bernetta on this issue. I would have sucked it up and voted for it. They didn't. That's their choice. They're still representing a lot of people, even though I disagree with them on that issue. But again, I'm not getting, all out ready to go to war. I'm not castigating Alicia and Keisha. I know he has. And again, I'll give some credit to Curtis Bertie, who has been consistent on this one issue of term limits, that it did finally get passed. But it's been 3 years. I'm remarking that it's interesting that now that we're in an election year, term limits are headed to the legislature for final approval. All right, we got council raises, and next Thursday is the second reading and the vote on the impact fee ordinance. And, I've said it before, there's only 4 or 5 or 6 council term defining votes, right? The hiring of Jay Melder, some of the property tax votes, the Weeping Time special use permit vote, the Crew Lounge liquor license vote, right? Like
Right.
these are like just votes that are taken that are highly divided and highly talked about that mean a lot to a lot of different voters in different parts of this city.
You're being
I
incivil, Chuck.
I hear you. I mean, this is what they said about John Lewis and all these people 55 years ago. Good trouble. Isn't that what it's called? Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm here to tell everybody, as we wrap up this week's show, like this vote coming up next week is going to be one of the defining votes. And I find it interesting that in the midst of this debate, the usual people that we would say would be coming out against it, Bill Dars, for example, is out for it,
Right,
right? And
right.
and then like people that we would normally think would be on our side, like this beat writer at the Savannah, he's
I
not
think
really
Adam Van
giving
Burmer. I think
even
Adam
Adam
Van,
Van Burmer's for it. So like, what is this? What is the thing Regina always used to say? Politics makes strange bedfellows. There's no permanent friends,
no
no
permanent
permanent
friends,
enemies,
permanent
just
enemies.
permanent issues,
Right,
right? So,
right.
um,
Well, let's
again,
remind everybody.
again, please don't come up on here talking about what I think. You don't know what we think. We've been doing this a lot longer than you have. All right. I respect that you're a fan of your alderman in the 6th district. I'm on here giving Curtis credit for getting the term limits passed, but please don't insult my intelligence about what we think who is. All right. We think anybody running for office this year is a positive addition. I hope, just like what's happening in the 3rd district, I hope it's 4 or 5 candidates in every single race. We need as much open debate because the rules on council have prevented a lot of open debate and dialogue that should have been happening these 4 years. And it needs to happen during this election cycle. So we know that this is the unofficial start. It's a long way. It's a long way till qualifying. We still got 6 whole months until qualifying in August happens. And it's going to be a lot of twists and turns in this race between now and then.
Shape
What do you,
changing.
what do you think about the impact fee vote coming up, John? Final
Okay,
prediction.
just in terms of housekeeping, I want to respond to Joanne.
Sure.
Uh, she corrected me a while back when we were pushing the mentor issue and how hanging on to mentor decimated the police department. And I included Curtis's image in the meme. And she reminded me that Curtis was not a fan of Minter. And I stood corrected and I said, you know what?
Minority on that, though.
What? Well,
He was a minority on that.
I have a little something, another dimension to add to this.
Sure.
I understand that Curtis was not in favor of Minter, but he did not speak out against Minter. He quietly withheld his support of Minter, where the department was losing seasoned, veteran, quality staff, since they took office. With all the police shootings of civilians, both armed and unarmed, the defections and the movement of officers away from the department, not into the department, that was number one, a leadership problem in the form of Minter. Van wanted to protect Minter. So Curtis quietly opposed Minter, but he didn't do enough, Joanne, in my book, to get an A grade on that. I'm going to give him a C plus.
She says he did a news report. That's a rebuttal. This is a city council that has not gone into executive session in like 2 years.
This
right?
is a city council that doesn't have a voice except for one, Van Johnson.
Correct. It's Van Johnson's voice.
Allowed.
Van Johnson held on to Chief Minter until he could get an appointment opened up, with Joe Biden's administration in D.C. It's definitely a black mark on this 4-year term. You had basically 75% of the department openly call for changes in leadership and were ignored. And now look at Lenny Gunther. I mean, just 4 or 5 months in, and all reports are that the department's morale is up. Numbers are getting a little bit better, and it's not where we want it to be, but it's where we are.
Well, if there's any cut line or through point or tagline for this council coming into this election, which is only 8 months away, 7 months away, it's too little, too late. So I also point out they're ballyhooing this $15 an hour pay rate at the city of Savannah that no one makes under $15 an hour. They were promising that in their campaigns in 2019.
Yeah, with inflation being 10% for the last 2 years.
2.5 years of berserko inflation to now drop a $15 an hour salary. I mean, shit, the police officers, they finally upped the salary, but how long did it take them to figure out that was a huge problem? This is a slow moving train wreck of a council that is being overseen and managed with stagecraft by one man, Van Johnson. So all his supporters better hope his coattails are not only long but strong.
Yeah. Well, I'm still going to stick with my prediction, John. I think impact fees are going to get a fail next week. I'm going to take that side of the bet.
Well, let's remind everyone that in the campaign forums in 2019, Ned Redalucci will vouch for this, as he and WSAV put on probably the largest forum on the South Side at the college. And Van Johnson said he would support impact fees no matter what, that the time had come. Okay. Estelle Shabazz never said she would support impact fees. Nick, I believe, said he would support impact fees. Dietrich, I made the ad guy and the memes supporting impact fees. The same thing for Linda. Same thing for Curtis. So I think if these people have any sense at all, they will vote yes, and there will be a 5-4 passage of impact fees.
You think it's going to be 5-4?
Yeah, I think it's going to pass by one vote.
I think it's going to be 5-4 against.
Okay.
Well, I think it's going to be the Crew Lounge vote. I think it's going to be Mayor Van Johnson, Keisha, Alicia, and Bernetta voting for it. And I think it's going to be all district aldermen voting against it. So,
well, Chuck, we educated and pushed with the growth series all through January on our page. People responded to it very well, and people understand that growth costs existing residents. So you guys can tool around with your buddies at SCAD up in Atlanta and get the VIP treatment and the luxury buses and catering, but you are going back on your campaign commitments, and we're going to remind you.
Me too. I hope they do too, but I'm not banking on it.
Thank you, Joanne.
I hope that they do, but I'm just not banking on it.
Look, I'm going to pull out for next show a whole bunch of 2019 memes.
Yeah, you want to stroll down memory lane, don't you?
This is the time to remind Dietrich, Linda, and Curtis what they agreed to. Not only with us, but
they all agreed that they were going to reconsider the arena too, and there was never any serious reconsideration of the arena. I hear you, but
that was a tall order. Okay, I can stomach and understand the flip on that, but on impact fees, term limits, and pilot programs, understaffed police department and tourism management, all of that stuff was the core of their identity as candidates. And now they're just a bunch of mush at the whim of Van Johnson. Whatever Daddy Van says we're going to do, they all, yes, Daddy Van, yes. That's what we'll do.
All right. Let's end the show on something funny and stupid. All right.
Okay.
I've been asking you all week because, boy, ever since last weekend, the obsession with objects flying in the sky has
Okay.
skyrocketed in this country. I want to ask you, what does it tell you that the last three of these things that were shot down were apparently like recreational, like personal style weather balloons and stuff? Did you read that today?
No, that's
Okay, so like remember, like the first one was this big balloon, and it was a Chinese
yeah,
supposed weather
two
balloon.
football fields across. Yeah,
huge,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they shot that down, and then they had these other three objects that were unidentified that they said were not the Chinese, and it turns out like they were like the size of cars. They were like, much more smaller,
Yeah.
and they were like
amateur
like
weather
guys,
amateur
just
weather
like,
balloon
just like some people.
for
Like,
some hobbyist in the
I shout
security
out to Jim Marikas. I seen Marikas posted this. Like,
right.
U.S. military spends, $80 million blowing, freaking garage guys stuff out of the sky.
Well, sorry, Chuck.
It's no wonder we can't get inflation below 7%. Those Booz Allen Hamilton defense consulting contracts got to get paid out somehow. Just saying.
Yeah. God, I wish those balloons had been a SCAD project of some sort.
Yeah, man. But one last thing. We had a great time at the SCAD protest 2 weekends ago.
Yeah, what?
Our last
40,
show.
50 people? Yeah.
About 40 people, about 35 continuously there the whole time. It was a very good turnout. They had to change the bus routes to not see us so that everybody would feel better about themselves on the tours SCAD was giving. So it's always nice to have direct action mean something. Angela Simmons, couldn't agree with you more. You got one candidate in the race, Keisha Gibson Carter. Vote for some change. It's pretty simple calculation in the mayor's race right now.
Yeah, well,
if you're happy with these last 3.5 years, you're gonna vote for Van. If you're not, you're looking for an alternative. It's that simple.
Yeah, well, the last thing we need is another 4 years of a televangelistic mayor. I kind of feel like I'm being.
Well, let me answer the question you asked early on. What do I think about this whole Nick Zoller operation thing at the city? Like, I think we need a forensic audit. I think we need a forensic audit of all of the money spent on PR the last 4 years.
Did they promise that in the 2019?
They all did too, because of Regina. Yes, they did.
Man,
yes, they
did. I've read quite a bit lately, and voters' memories are so freaking short. If people would remember well, I mean, it's only what happened last month or the last 2 months that seems to have any stickiness in the voters' memory. I mean, isn't this the council that came out saying, "Oh, we gotta really work on our mental health services and our home population,
wraparound services"? Remember that term?
Yeah. And then the first thing they do is they pass an ordinance so that panhandlers can't panhandle at the intersections.
Well, remember they had to get a bond for Rockingham Farms done. That was more important.
That was a priority, Chuck.
Super priority, man. Come on, this is a CETA client. We got to get this done.
Yeah.
So just read up. You can Google any of the stuff we're talking about. It's all from the first year of the term. But it's good to be back in the saddle. I'm sure we're going to be having more and more shows as the elections gear up this year, and we'll be back next Thursday, because I think next Thursday's meeting is at night, maybe.
No, the last one was at night, I think.
Maybe it started today. Then we'll be on at 7:45, 8, and hopefully we'll be talking about the impact fee vote and how it went down.
Yeah, and would it be fair to say that all candidates are welcome to come onto the show and talk to us about?
I'm happy to invite any of them on, but
that includes Linda. That includes Dietrich. That includes Nick. That includes Curtis. That includes the mayor. We'll probably host some forums in conjunction with other groups. And come on.
I don't know. People just may not want to participate. These are tough questions. You know, Chester Ellis did one round with us and would never come back. You know, I mean, I'm just saying. You know, you got to be.
Yeah.
You got to be ready.
So did Antoine. Antoine got all bent because we were asking.
These are tough policy questions we're asking, and none of these candidates want to be put. You know, they don't want to commit to it.
Well, Chuck, I guess my point is I don't want anyone to believe or understand or think that we're not showcasing. We're only showcasing the candidates that we've come to agree have a firmer, better grip on policy. Everyone is welcome to come defend their positions and discuss policy at Better Savannah. That goes without saying.
All right, they want to be, they're going to be held accountable. Hey, you know, we'll do whatever's possible. Okay?
We'll do it, absolutely.
But come back and join us next week after the Impact Fee vote. We'll be discussing that. Hopefully, there's some news from our favorite island in Chatham County soon, and you know, we'll just keep it moving. Y'all come back and see us next week.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Don't you think it's time for the city of Savannah to have an honest tourism management plan? Let SCAD start paying its fair share? And the hospitality industry needs to increase its wages? The impacts of new growth should not cost residents. All local elected officials on council and commission should have term limits. We're working hard to accomplish these policies. We need your help. Please contribute whatever you can, $5, $10, or $20, by going to bettersavannah.org. Donate. Thank you.